So welcome to KSB's Social Impact Conference. I think this is the first social impact conference which is being organized by anybody from the financial sector in Pakistan. Mostly, social impact still in Pakistan is either with NGOs or with DFIs or with the government-related bodies. So the financial sector, I think the understanding of impact and understanding of factors such as ESG, which is now mainstream in the developed markets or in the global financial market, is still not there in the capital markets. So this is our first attempt to present some companies which have a greater social impact and which are active in the areas such as agriculture and healthcare. And we thought it's necessary because of course, globally also, ESG is now becoming a mainstream, has already become a part of mainstream finance. In the US, 33% of total assets under management by institutional investors now follow some kind of ESG screen. Globally, till 2018, I think the number was $40 trillion of assets which track ESG screens. So it has already become a key component, if not perhaps the most important component of investing for institutional investors in the mainstream financial world. So, and I'm sure that this trend Pakistan will need to adopt this even in the public markets. The good thing is that on the private market as well as in the government level, impact and adherence to UN's SDG is a key priority area, especially for the current government. And there Imran Khan, who's the prime minister, he has been a champion for especially on climate change, and this has been a part of his policy even prior to him getting into government. So one of his main milestone achievement was planting 1 billion trees in the province of KP, which got featured globally and got recognized by World Economic Forum as well. It's interesting that Pakistan that his project of planting 1 billion trees in KP province of Pakistan helped Pakistan meet its target for UN SDG almost 10 years in advance. And yesterday at the UN's at the Climate Ambition Conference Summit, he gave more targets for the country, and he said that we want to reduce carbon emission by 60% by 2030. And also he wants all 30% of the cars to be based on electric batteries by this time period. And that's a big jump given the fact that right now there are no electric cars in Pakistan. So the targets which he has given are quite ambitious. He has also given a target out that his government wants to plant 10 billion trees. So that's a 10x growth in what he achieved previously over the next 3 years. So the good thing is that at least on the government level, this is the top priority coming from straight from the person who's the head of the government, and it is going down. 5 companies which I will be presenting today are all private companies, and as I said earlier, that in the public market there's still limited, I wouldn't say the word interest, but perhaps limited even exposure or understanding of how important measuring impact of companies and measuring the quality on standards such on environment, socially responsible investment and governance are. We did a study, and before we start the presentations, I'll just quickly run through some of the key points of that. In that study, what we did was that we took UN's SDGs, and we applied that on the top 30 companies which are listed in Pakistan, and we tried to use those SDGs to filter out the companies which we think are the best position in terms of adherence to those standards which the government has committed to meeting. But before that, I would really request Nasir Ali Shah Bukhari Saab, who's the chairman of KSB, to say some opening words, because this event is actually to commemorate the 68 years of KSB. We did an earlier event last week, which was on technology, and this one is on social impact, which are the these two things, tech and social impact, are for us the most important part of our fabric at KSB. And we also think that perhaps these are the 2 most important things for Pakistan. Nasir Saab, would be great if you could say some words before we start.
It's a great pleasure and honor that in continuation of the 68th anniversary of KASB, our main effort has been to attract investors in the two key areas, that is technology and social impact financing. Social impact has become a very important and key thing. Just other day, our Prime Minister here in Pakistan has announced that all the coal power projects would be now converted, and the plantations have gone up to about $10 billion target, 10 billion trees target, which is a very important and significant hallmark of his government. Besides, there is a commitment that by 2030, 30% of the automobile would be on electric vehicles. Similarly, around the startups which we have here in Pakistan, the focus is now more and more on ESG, and also the listed companies are now targeting towards impact investments. These are changing times, and these changing times desire us to be at the front of accepting this change and become a source of providing funding for the startup companies in this area. So hence this is a special conference. So I would be very happy and delighted with all those participants who are today here, to thank them, and their full participation in today's conference is requested. And I wish good luck to all those companies which are today making their presentation, and there are many, many more which are now getting ready to come forward. So exciting times with technology and social impact investments. These are times in Pakistan where we can foresee a quiet revolution coming. And with these words, I would like all the team of KASB to be proud of this first ever social impact conference in Pakistan.
Thank you. Thank you for those words. And while I was thinking that the interesting thing about social impact areas in Pakistan is that although the companies which are presenting over here are slightly earlier stage companies, and they have been set up over the last perhaps 2 to 3 years, but the interesting thing is that most of the sectors which have high social impact have huge total addressable markets. So healthcare, Pakistan has a population of 200 million people, and the government health infrastructure is fairly poor. So there's opportunities for companies which are leveraging technology to cater to a bigger market. So the scalability and the growth of some of these companies, which will be telling their story throughout this day, you'll be impressed how quickly are they scaling, because the addressable market is huge. Similarly, on the side of agriculture, 45% of Pakistan's GDP comes from agriculture. So it's such a big sector that, again, any application of technology, any application or any kind of reforms or modernization in that sector has a multifold impact, just because the addressable market is so huge, which is not the case in some of the other sectors where there are larger established companies which are listed. So I'll just quickly run through our study which we did on ESG application on the public markets. Yeah. Can you see my report? Talha, is it up on the screen?
Yeah, we can see your report. I can see it.
Okay, that's great. Yes, so this was. Thank you. So this study, which we did in the middle of this year, we applied ESG based on UN's framework and the SDGs, and we screened the top 30 companies weighted by market cap, and we saw which of those have higher adherence to those goals. Now, the interesting thing about Pakistan Stock Exchange is that it's heavy on energy, oil and gas exploration, and financial services. So those two sectors account for around 65 to 70% of the total index. So automatically it gets, and perhaps that's also one of the reasons why over the last 3 years, we have seen constant pullout of global investors from the public markets. Perhaps it's these companies no longer fit the requirements which some of these investors have on the ESG side. And we at KSB have been, driving this change and trying to communicate to companies that it's extremely important for them to realize the significance of ESG, and also to increase the disclosure on that side. So if they are compliant, then they should A, talk about it, and B, if they're not, then they should try to comply with it, and again, tell the story in terms of how they are planning to comply with good governance and climate change and environmental standards. So in our study, what we found was that Nestle Pakistan, which is a subsidiary of Nestle International, Engro Corp, which is another consumer company, Engro Fertilizers, Fauji Fertilizers, Habib Bank, and Searle, which is a pharmaceutical company, has screened the best on our standards. Since some of the participants on the call are, perhaps most of the participants on this call are people in the public markets, I'll just quickly mention some of the statistics which I gave earlier, that by 2018, more than $30 trillion of assets were following some kind of sustainable investment framework. I suspect this number has increased substantially. If not, I suspect it's higher than 50 trillion by now. The another important thing is that, of course, regulation is pushing this, but an important thing is that data has shown that companies which are ESG compliant are actually good quality companies. So, while previously people thought of ESG as something which was like philanthropy, as CSR, it's actually not that. It's actually good business. If you are socially conscious about your business, if you're good to your employees, good to your stakeholders, good to your society, then it's proven that you actually create greater shareholder value sustainably for your shareholders. And this is what this chart shows, both on the right side and the left side, that companies which are in MSCI's ESG index have outperformed companies which are not in that. So it's good quality business. It's good for business, and not just something which is good to have. There are a lot of more details on this report. I won't go through that, but if somebody wants the report, I can send it to them. But I'll just quickly jump to some of the companies. So Nestle Pakistan screened the best. It is one of the signatories of UN's Global Compact Network, and they won the award for being SDG champion by UN for the last 4 years. In fact, if you look at their website, actually, even the whole corporate profile and corporate strategy has been to promote these goals and to promote this essence that they want to be compliant to those goals. So there's a big focus. They have good corporate governance, but there's also a lot of focus on climate change, poverty eradication, hunger eradication, and promoting equality and clean environment. Engro is similar. However, like it ranks slightly below. It ranks below Nestle because the company also has operations in energy sector, and they are developing a coal power plant, but they're taking steps to reduce the overall carbon footprint. Another thing great about Engro was that female participation on the board of all their companies was the highest in Pakistan. Engro Fertilizer is another listed company. It's a subsidiary of Engro, but separately listed, operates in agriculture area, which automatically helps it score higher on social impact. Fauji Fertilizer on similar angles. Now, Habib Bank was interesting. Now, this is the largest bank in Pakistan, and also one of the oldest banks, and it's now owned by the Aga Khan Foundation, which is a non-government organization which is working on social development. So the shareholder structure is actually very much focused on ESG related activities, but Habib Bank was fined because of compliance breaches related to it. Their subsidiary in the US was fined for compliance breaches related to money laundering. And now that was a legacy issue because this bank It's one of the oldest banks in Pakistan, and the new shareholder got acquired it perhaps around 10 to 15 years ago. So some of those changes which the company should have done were not implemented. It was difficult to do that on a larger scale, perhaps. But since that fine, they closed down the US subsidiary and they went into a massive investment project in which they did digital transformation and they imposed very strict compliance regime. So I think because the shareholder who was a sponsor of the bank has high standards on and adherence to these, or at least they recognize the significance of ESG, that they have done massive investment in that last 24 months, and now they're at the end of that investment, and I think that will help them reap the benefits going forward. The last company on our list was Searle, which is a pharmaceutical company, and it's also one of the companies which is producing the drug for COVID. So they are one of the producers of Remdesivir, Gilead's product. Anyone who wants the report, we can share it with them. And I think what was also interesting is their returns. So in the last 10 years, most of these companies, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. So some of these companies have outperformed Karachi Index, the broader market. How many? 1, 2, almost 20% have. And but I think Habib Bank's underperformance was driven by the fine which they had in the past, and I think going forward, you'll see the outperformance. And in fact, we see that outperformance in the latest data, that now it has been outperforming the broader market. So our next presentation starts in 10 minutes. The first company which is going to present is Mandi Express. And this company is trying to solve the problem of the wastage in the agricultural supply chain by linking farmers directly to the market. So it's trying to cut the middleman out and make it more fairer for the farmers by getting them better price on their produce. Because in the past, the Pakistani supply chain for agriculture is very fragmented. And I'll do this, stop this screen share. Yeah. So the supply chain in agriculture is, Richard, I'll send it over to you. Supply chain for agriculture is fragmented, and also there's a problem of the middleman being the lender. So there's something called the Archi. He lends money to the farmer, and in the return for that loan which he gives to the farmer for his produce, he does an agreement that the farmer is forced to sell the produce to the lender once the crop is ready. And this leads to effective interest rates of around 40 to 50%, as it ties the farmer to a captive buyer. So Mandi Express is trying to solve that problem. After that, there's UpTrade, which is a woman-led organization which is trying to, which is very innovative. They introduce a barter system which helps farmers living in rural Pakistan to exchange their goats, which they have a lot of, for water power pumps, because there's a big shortage of water in rural Pakistan. So they devised this mechanism where these guys could trade in their goats in return for water pumps. And Farid Salahuddin, who's the founder of that company, will be telling us more about it.